All right, viewers and listeners, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good day and welcome to this exclusive intercontinental panel interview on my YouTube channel, Global Arena TV. I'm your host, Umar Isa Dandagu. Well, for a couple of years, I have been organizing what I hope to have been and continues to be richly comprehensive panel interviews on significant topics with experts from different corners of the world, from different geopolitically contentious issues to now Bollywood, which, well, one way or the other, goes beyond just the melody of Atif Aslam's or Arijit Singh's beautiful songs and SRK's voice and posture. This time around, we are going to explore the concept of soft power with a reference to the Mumbai based film industry, which is thought by many to represent the whole Indian cinema, and that is false because there are many other film industries operating in different parts of India. On the other hand, the drivers of those films are the actors and actresses we see in those movies who have amassed a countless number of fans and supporters almost all over the world, including here in Nigeria, where we have a big organization or association called the Bollywood Fans of Nigeria. It's a group of young, enthusiastically vibrant young people, mostly from northern Nigeria, with a strong base in Kano, our state rather, whose members include fans of most, if not all, of the major Bollywood stars. They celebrate their celebrities' birthdays and film releases and so on. For Salman Khan's fans, they are worried, well, jokingly, despite approaching his 59th birthday, that he is still single. We don't know. Finally, as a political and diplomatic correspondent, I always look at film industries from our lenses and prisms beyond the entertainment, and Bollywood is no exception. For example, look at Ekta Tiger and Tiger Zindahe of Salman Khan, and Agent Vinod and Phantom of Saif Ali Khan. Very much typical of Hollywood spy thriller with quote unquote political influence. Well, there's a lot to take in, to discuss, to analyze, to dissect, and joining me in the discussion and are our three experts, two of whom directly connected to film studies and Bollywood, while the other is a huge fan and more or less like an ambassador of Indian culture and Bollywood in Kano State because he always reminds people of Bollywood. From Kano State, Northern Nigeria, I'm joined by Professor Abdallah Uba Adamu. He is he is from the Department of Information and Media Studies, Bayero University, Kano, former Vice Chancellor of National Open University of Nigeria. Professor, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Well, from the U.S. state of Michigan, I am joined by Dr. Swapnil Rai, Assistant Professor at the Department of Film and Media Studies, University of Michigan. She is the author of a latest book called Networked Bollywood, How Star Power Globalized Hindi Cinema. And amazingly, she has the picture of Shah Rukh Khan on the cover of the book, and I'm sure, I'm sure fans of Shah Rukh Khan would be delighted. And I think he even liked her post on Twitter. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Swapnil Rai, or Swapnil Rai in Bengali accent, for being with me.
Not a Bengali. I'm not a Bengali. Swapnil Rai is good.
Okay, yeah. I heard somebody's pronouncing it as Swapnil and he said it's Bengali. By the way, thank you for joining us. Could we see the cover of your book, please? So, as you can see, viewers, there is a picture of Shah Rukh Khan. I don't know, in front of, is it, you can unmute yourself, is it Taj Mahal building? And there are lots
No,
of.
no. So because it talks about the global power of Bollywood stars, it's Somerset House in England, where, if you look carefully, it's the audience of around 2,000 moviegoers enjoying the premiere of Shah Rukh Khan's film, Chak De India. So it's kind of Somerset House do open air screenings. So it's that screening, Getty Images.
Yeah.
And I thought that kind of, we put it on the cover, even though the book covers several stars, not just Shah Rukh Khan, but this was the talk about Star the Global Arena,
Yeah,
since the book is called How Star Power Globalized Indian Cinema.
yeah, definitely. We will explore that in the course of the program. Sharada Maganti, popularly known as Mrs. Maganti, she is the Public and Government Relations Director at Skyline University, Nigeria, and she has been in Nigeria for about 36 years or more. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the show.
Thank you, Umar. Thank you for having me. And it's a pleasure meeting Dr. Swapnil and Dr. Abdallah.
Okay.
Prof,
Well, let's get started, of course. All right. Briefly, let me start with Dr. Swapnil Rai. You have written a book about Bollywood stars and how those stars have sort of contributed in shaping the India's image and projecting it globally. What is the inspiration behind your writing, behind this book?
So, and I got an internship with an Indian newspaper, a national newspaper called the Indian Express. And with that internship, the kind of movies, and this was a short period in my life, but the kind of movies I covered, a lot of movies that I saw were Indian movies, but there was no India in it. And even if like the subject, so one of the movies I remember explicitly covering was this movie called Salam Namaste. The entire movie was set in Australia. And the next movie that I covered was this movie called Mangal Pandey. So even though it was about this kind of historical thing, but it was very much a co-production, very much geared towards the international market. And suddenly, like, so as a kid, like few years ago, growing up, the kind of Bollywood that I'd seen versus Bollywood that I was covering now seemed very different. And that left me with a lot of questions with how the industry is changing, why it is changing, and all of that. And so as time went on, I was a journalist. I moved to Reuters journalism, and eventually when I came back to academia, these were some of the questions that I wanted to explore. How did the industry globalize, and was it only the moment when it became global, or was it always global from the start, and did it already have like global markets such as in Africa and where people were already historically watching Indian films, and what all of that meant and what role did stars play in that?
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Professor Abdallah Uba Adam, what's your connection to Bollywood? Currently, you are working on a book called The Cult of Khan, and I'm sure you've been inspired by those young people in Kano State who are celebrating their fans' birthdays and so on and so forth. They have been inviting you. Could you chip in and talk about your inspiration, your connection to Bollywood, and why you are working on this project?
Yeah. Ironically enough, I'm not interested in Indian movies. I don't even like them. I don't watch them. To the best of my knowledge, I only watched one Indian film, and that was Nambari. And that was because I just want to know just what was going on. So not really because I care about it, but I just say, let me just watch one Indian film. But however, one Indian film that really stuck in my mind was Rani Rukmati, which was released sometimes in 1956. I wasn't interested in the film, but the songs in the film were my entry into this Bollywood studies here in Kano State, northern Nigeria. Some of the songs were reworked and readapted by young people within the Kano City in Hausa language. They use onomatopoeic devices in order to create Hausa equivalents of the Indian lyrics using the melody of the original Indian lyrics. That was what caught my interest in that textuality, the relationship between sound, language, and transglobal media flow. And I started looking at it. For instance, in Rani Rukmati, they have this. It has agar likena chaho azadi ke mujamon se har mati Allahu akbar. And the kids around here rewalked it to me. Ina su tubayya ina sarki mun je yaki mun dawo har mati Allahu akbar. And they were saying Mahdi, not Mahathir. The Indians were saying Mahathir, which was a god form. But this guy, Mahdi, who was a savior, so they substituted what makes them comfortable. They're not comfortable with the Indian god form because of the pantheism and so on. But so they substituted it with Mahdi, who happened to be a savior. That was the beginning of my interest. And eventually, when I got into it, I discovered there is a huge lake of Indian appropriations by Islamia group, Islamic dance performers, filmmakers, novelists, and everybody was copying Indians left, right, and center, unashamedly. Because when I asked them, why are you doing this? They said, because Indians are similar to us. We have similar culture. The biggest similarity in the culture is the repression of women. I mean, women are supposed to be subservient, they are supposed to be obedient, they are supposed to be beautiful. That's the typical image of a Hausa person has of woman. Beautiful, subservient. And the Indian films of the early ones before Shah Rukh Khan and before Amitabh Bachchan, the earlier Indian films reflect women in such subservient, shy mood. They have bangles all over the place. They have jewelry. They have a sari, and they are always gazing. Their eyes are gazed down, looking down when they're talking to other people. Not confrontational, no threat, nothing. So this is why they prepare those Indian films, and I was documenting them, studying them, and with the help of a series of research assistants, we were able to identify hundreds and hundreds of songs that were appropriated, either as house song or religious song, just popular, ordinary, secular song.
Yeah,
so this
definitely.
is my entry point.
Yeah, of course, before we dive deeply into the crux of the conversation, and I want to get to Mrs. Maganti, but one criticism that a lot of people could throw at you, Professor Abdallah, is the fact that how could you do justice to a film industry that you have not watched as many films as possible? How could you do justice while you come to conduct your research and publishing books and papers on that?
I don't have to watch it. I have people who watch it.
And
that's what research is all about. I mean,
yes,
I don't have
they
to
give you their own side of the story. And could that not be?
No, they just all I want is for people to give me a synopsis. What is this story all about? And that's all they did. And don't forget, this was before internet. Now with internet, I don't even need anyone. All I need to do is go to Wikipedia and there's a full description of a particular film. And that's all I need, data. I see data from all sources. So I don't have to sit down and watch an Indian film to make meaning out of that film. There are people who watch it and tell me what it's all about. The internet now, particularly Wikipedia, Internet Movie Database, and so many other places, even in the Indian side themselves, will give you scene by scene description of what has happened. And that's all I need to know. Then I have a similar thing with the House of Films, who will give me scene by scene of the House of Film that they have copied. And that's all I think. Just simply say this film was based on that film. Perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a perfect, acceptable research methodology. Yes.
All right, definitely. Mrs. Maganti is smiling. I don't think she believes that one could do justice to an Indian film without watching them. Mrs. Maganti, if you can chip in.
Don't forget, Omar. Don't forget. It's not a question. We're using the wrong expression. Justice, doing justice. Doing justice means passing judgment.
Okay.
You are saying something is bad or something is good. Researchers never say something is bad or something is good. All you are saying is that in this film, they show a house with photos. That's an Indian film. In House of Film, they show the house with photos. That is all. Whether that is good or bad is irrelevant. What we are saying is that element by element, that is copied. Okay. Nobody is talking about the plot or the characterization or the message. No, we don't care about that. Okay. What we are saying is that they copied this film in total as House of Film. So that is the transglobal film. As far as the plots and the things are concerned, that's something different.
Okay, this is clarified. Yes, Dr. Swapnil.
I just wanted to clarify also on Dr. Abdullah's behalf that his question is more linguistic and one of cultural appropriation, for which he doesn't really like he's saying he's not making a value judgment on either this film or that film. He's identifying a phenomenon where these Indian films are being copied into Hausa films, and what does that mean? I mean, I think what does that mean is a different question,
Yeah.
for which you would need to watch the films. But he's not asking that question.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Mrs.
No,
Maganti.
I was about to say that only, Umar. Actually, Dr. Abdullah being from the information technology department, and then, he's sourcing information and he's channelizing it the way he wishes to, that, there is a copy of the films made by the Bollywood into Nollywood. And it is true. There are some movies that have been made that way. The story, there is so much of similarity in the story, though the songs and all will not be there. As he said in Rani Rupamati, the song is there, and then, children are singing at that time. It does happen like that because, with my experience here, I saw there is a very strong bondage between India and especially Nigeria, and especially us in Kano, because the culture is so similar. So they try to portray a lot of things that are depicted in the films. Most importantly, if I talk to the youngsters, they always say, oh, we love the jewelry they wear, we love the dresses they wear, we love the saris, we love the designs they make. These kind of little things. Probably back in India also, the youngsters do think that it's like a fashion story, or it's like a new jewelry designs what they can see in. So I'm sure Professor Abdullah will agree to this, and Swapnil also, Dr. Swapnil also will say yes to this, because I mean the exchange of culture has been happening for years.
Yeah, definitely.
And
And just another additional point. The filmmakers, the house of filmmakers here in Kano, are the ones who started saying they copy Indian films. So who am I to argue with them? I mean, this guy will come and tell you, I'm going to make a film, Zaranda or whatever, and this film is going to be based on a film by so. And ask him, why are you doing this? Why can't you make your own film? He said, no. I don't have the time, the resources to get out a film. So all I do is just simply pick up a film that I think I like, and then I convert it scene by scene into an Indian film. And all I'm saying is, this is what this guy does, but this is what he says. So I don't have to watch his film. I don't have to watch the Hausa film. I don't have to watch the Indian film. I just listen to what they tell me, and then I put it together. And so far, nobody has said I'm lying. Oh, I'm saying I'm wrong. Well, that's what they have been saying. They have been doing.
Yeah. I was looking for a clarification. I wanted you to make these points. Definitely. All right, Dr. Swapnil, right? Let me talk to you about this. Looking at what Mrs. Maganti and Professor Abdallah have both talked about in terms of the sheer popularity of Bollywood, what more can you say about the popularity of Bollywood, and how do you feel when you realize that many people miles away, thousands of miles away from India, are adapting the Indian films, especially the Bollywood films, and researchers are writing about it, documenting it? How do you feel as an Indian, as an Indian film researcher?
Yeah. So, I am, well, to clarify, Indian American.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other thing is that I think that I would love to work with Professor Abdullah's data set, because I think that what he has gathered is an enormous amount of data where me, as a more qualitative scholar, can use that kind of quantitative data to do different types of analyses to see why these adaptations are happening, like what are the nuances of these adaptations, and like simple things that Professor Abdullah talked about, how Mahadev was made into Mahadi, and what do these, like, what are these cultural similarities, resonances, but replacements? What do they mean at a deeper level? Now, what I think, and I'm going to take it back to my book, is this, you reached out to me because in your email you said people do not talk about the connection to Africa. I think that one thing with Bollywood and largely the scholarship about Bollywood was that people ignored connections to non-Anglophone contexts. Everybody was all about, oh, they're popular in US and they're popular in UK and they're popular in New Zealand. And, sudden influx of this population post 2000 boom. So there's all these Indian diaspora and they're watching these movies. And that was one of the reasons why the Indian state then kind of formalized and recognized films as an industry. But in my book, I talk about how for the first 100 years of its history, before that recognition came, India was making films, and those films were traveling globally to a lot of non-Anglophone regions like Africa, like Egypt, like in the Cold War context to Russia and Eastern Europe. And how in that process, what were sort of the structures that sustained it, and how stars within it emerged as these kind of driven by their own individual business interests, because the industry was set up not in the Hollywood way. So you had a lot of like popular stars who set up their own production companies. They were businessmen and they wanted their cinema to travel. So they found the means, they found like different ways to distribute Indian films. And in that way, they became popular, let's say in Africa, in Egypt, Amitabh Bachchan was huge, and how they became these, to your question, these non-state diplomatic actors that kind of conveyed a certain positive image about India to the rest of the world.
Yeah, definitely. Professor Abdallah, if you can chip in, Dr. Swapnil is very much interested in the angle you have taken in your research and would like to join hands.
Yeah, I mean, it will be fun. I mean, it will be cool. I have a book on all of these called Houses Nima, which is published by Lexington, which has now been purchased by Bloomsbury. And they have sent the manuscript to a reviewer. The reviewer has recommended publication. I have up to 15th October to finish any amendment, and the book will be out early in 2025. The whole sector is all about this global media flows and so on. So I'll certainly be very interested in exploring additional links and maybe a joint paper or even a joint book with you, Professor, about all this. And what I find very fascinating about the situation in Kano is that, yes, we have Indians living here, like her, Dr. Nagin, have been here for almost 40 years. But the popularity of Indian films here in Kano has nothing to do with Indian residents. In fact, they are not doing anything to promote it. They don't have a theater where they show Indian films. Even if they do, maybe they do it at homes, private homes, where they keep to themselves, as a community. Kano, I believe, is the only community in Nigeria, even in Africa, where Indian films are massively popular without Indians. In all the other places where you find the popularity of Indian film, there was a diasporic Indian presence, like in Zanzibar, in Tanzania, in Kenya, and all the others. But in Nigeria and in Ghana it's even weird, because in Ghana they have temples where they have Indian Hindi worship. They worship Hindi gods, because bizarrely enough they believe that the magic they see in Indian films is real. So they created temples and they become Hindu in order to get access to that magic. Because that's what they do. In Senegal, they have dance groups that are based on Indian film. But Kano is the only place where films from India could serve as templates for films here. And that has also generated a whole new community of what I call the cult of Khan. The cult of Khan is about people who literally worship Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan, and all the other Khan. And I call the whole thing Khanish. Call them Khanish people. So I'm writing a separate chapter paper on the cult of Khan using ethnographic studies, not film studies this time, but ethnographic, embedded myself in the group. So it will be very interesting if you can come up with a joint research project. I'm sure University of Michigan might be very interested in providing you with some kind of travel grant. You can come to Nigeria, come to Kano. Dr.
I
Abdallah
would love
will
to.
happily host you.
I would
Yeah, she will host you, I'm sure. And then we'll take
I
you
may
around
differ
to
here,
all
Prof.
this kind of.
Just Prof, I have a couple of
Yeah,
in your conversation, practically
yeah.
speaking. Actually, even in Nigeria, in Lagos, there are temples, and there are people who, most of them have converted into doing the Hare Ram, Hare Krishna and going to the temples and all. Here in Kano also, there is a temple. There are temples not just in Ghana, but in Nigeria also.
Wow,
And
that's
then
great.
most, it is on the belief, it's not on what they believe or anything, but they love this. And some of them sing bhajans in chaste Hindi. I hear them singing bhajans, and even we had a show here in Kano, an Nigerian who actually sang Hindi songs. Here, I will tell you, there are certain group of individuals. Umar, you know them also.
Yeah.
They speak Hindi, and they wouldn't. Even the Indian people will forget, but they will not forget our Independence Day, Republic Day, or Diwali, or
Oh,
Holi,
yoga.
and they keep sending greetings to us in those different ways. And even during functions and festivals, they are the ones who come and perform, or sometimes, they choreograph certain Hindi songs, and they give dance steps, or either they do or make the children of Indian community perform. So there is a lot of interest in that. And then also have seen some of them link with the Indian cultural associations of those proper, they states. Like here in Kano, we have Indian Cultural Association Kano. Likewise, they have Indian Association in Lagos and other places. So what they do is they are working in close knit with these associations, and some of them are sponsored for education to India also.
Yeah.
A few of them have gone to India and have come back, and they were very happy. They were even saying that they have gone to see Shah Rukh Khan, or they have gone to see Amitabh Bachchan,
But they
and
didn't see
they had
them.
a view and all that. They are so proud of talking about these things.
Yeah, of
Okay,
course.
so they are a large community of youngsters
So
who are really into this exchange program, and they are very much interested in going to India and learning the best practices, both education wise as well as entertainment wise.
yes, of course, Mrs. Maganti, are
Well,
you
that is
sharing?
why I
Oh,
said I'm
yes.
working. I'm
Okay.
working on this book, The Cult of Khan, and I would be very interested in working with a professor. She can get a grant. We can come up with a proposal. She can get a grant, I'm sure, from somewhere. She can come to Nigeria. We will host her, take her around so that she can see it, and then something will come up, because it shows what I call imperialism from below.
What does that
It's
mean?
used.
I think that there is a very good overlap between. So I will tell you why I would be interested, like especially from my perspective, is because who is valued as an audience, right? When thinking about soft power. So what you were saying is imperialism from below, but I have a kind of a different perspective on it.
Okay.
Because when talking about Bollywood, everybody, like I said, until this point, everybody wanted to talk about Bollywood that was Anglophone, that was all Western centric. Nobody really thinks about global South connections, that what we can give to each other, that how India has been valuable to Africa and how Africa has been valuable to India. How there are, so my book traces certain markets, but they are all not in the global North, they are in the global South, be it China, be it Egypt. I look at Afghanistan, which is also similar to Nigeria. They love Indian films. So I picked, but obviously this was one book and it had like a specific focus on certain stars and certain production companies that helped open up these markets. But Africa certainly is within, and what I would be interested in, Professor Abdullah, is to look at like global South connections. Like, what does it mean for Nigeria and India to kind of really be into each other's culture so much. And you see, like one thing I teach in my classes, which I had the Nigerian actress Umumi Dada come to my class and talk about it, is how Netflix is using like a lot of these connections to create new kinds of genres. So there's a film, I'm blanking on its name, but it has the story of it is very typical romantic comedy, and it's on Netflix, and it's this Indian lead who has fallen in love with a Nigerian woman, right? Or with an African woman.
Namaste. It's called
Namaste
Namaste.
Wahala.
Namaste.
Wahala. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's called Namaste
Yeah.
Wahala.
Namaste Wahala.
Exactly. So now they're using like that kind of proximity between India and Africa, the fact that so they know if they put out a movie like that, the Indians will watch it, the people in Africa will watch it, and already using the Bollywood genre, they have that audience. So like I would like take back like this argument of like imperialism, and there might be elements, but I would say like it is a cultural connection that nobody cares about, that nobody explores, that Bollywood is really not looking at the Africa. Everybody wants to look to the West, but we should try to look at each other and kind of foster these. That would be kind of my angle coming into it, because my next project, I'm looking at Turkey and India, and I'm looking at China and India, but Africa is certainly their huge continent where historically there's so much that Africa has provided India and India has provided Africa. Like when I was an undergrad, there were many students from Nigeria, other parts of Africa, that were international students in New Delhi at the different institutions. And that, I mean, that kind of cultural connection, and it's been historic. I mean, it's not just with the movies, as you yourself said, it goes way back, that it's not a new thing and nobody really cares
It's
for
not
it or
new thing,
talks
yeah.
about it. Yeah. So who's valued as an audience, and why is an African audience not valued? Why is the cult of Khans in Kano not valued in the same way? I've looked at Z World a little bit. I teach about it in my classes, but yeah, that would be kind of my point of view coming into it, if you're okay with that.
Well, Professor
Yeah,
Abdallah,
Yeah. Imperialism below was a counter argument against imperialism from above. I mean, in media studies, there's always been this belief that American media products have dominated the world, and that whatever we see from America, we take in. It's the hypodermic needle theory, in which people believe, particularly American writers, that whatever you see, you copy it, and it suppresses what you have. So American imperialism suppresses local production, local creativity, and so on, because everybody wants to copy American. But my data show that no, this is not the way. Here in Kano, Muslims don't like American films. They don't see them as inspiration, because they see them as decadent. They see them as bad. They see them as devil inspired. They see them as pornographic and so on. But they like Indian films, and they adopt them wholesale. In fact, during wedding ceremonies, they have what they call Indian night. Now, if this is not imperialism, I don't know what it is. Because whereas in America, American films is the attraction for American films is only about the American movies, but not American culture. Nobody wants to speak like an American. Nobody wants to dress like an American. If you try to dress like an American and go into a mosque, you'll be kicked out. But here we have a person conducting an Indian night during his wedding, watching Indian films. And at one stage, when a girl is married off, she was given a tape, a cassette CD, cassette player, those big ugly machines in the 80s, with her favorite Indian tape. Now, if this is not imperialism from below, not from above, it's not from America now, it's not from Finland, it's from the same global south. So that's why I call it imperialism from below.
Yeah, yep.
That
I
you are
get
just
your,
simply shifting one thing to another.
I get your point of view. I have a counterpoint to that, which is that like imperialism, American cultural imperialism, when thinking about the hypodermic needle and so on, America exported deliberately exported so much of their media to the rest of the world, where if you teach cultural imperialism, there's documentaries from the 90s as to why these TV stations in Africa, in other parts of the world, were purchasing shows like Dallas because they were being sold for dirt cheap. Now, India, being India, didn't have the infrastructure, did not even have a concerted strategy. That is what my book talks about. They didn't have a strategy to send their movies to Africa. Like you yourself said, they're not even shown in movie theaters. People are still watching it. I would call it like a diffuse form of soft power that exists among countries in the global south because of the cultural proximities that we share, because of the certain kind of historical past and historical connection, because there is no strategy. I mean, India honestly never had a soft power strategy around Bollywood. All they thought that, Indian dance is great, Indian music is great. So all the embassy performance and things you see, it'll be like classical music, classical dance. They hardly did movie screenings, right? Still, you have spaces like Kano, Nigeria, as you yourself were talking about, and they are not shown in movie theaters, which is the same story with China. I mean, it's like through piracy that certain movies reach there, and then people are liking it and talking about it, which is the thing that I'm interested in, which is to see like what is it about Indian culture and African culture that makes these people like respond to this media in specific ways. So I feel like I get your point. But I also see that there is kind of it's slightly different. It's not the same because
Exactly.
Okay.
I just want to say a point here, Dr. Swapnil.
And I think
there is
we
a
can
small
exploit
thing.
in the book.
There is
We
a
can
small
exploit.
thing I would want to contradict with Professor Abdallah. Movies are shown in theaters here, everywhere. We had shows. I told you about 30 years ago, there was a theater here, Marhaba Theater, where they used to have Indian movies shown. And then, now also they bring, when ShopRite and all those places, they have shows coming in. After that, when all these little power failures, we had all our limitations here, then they stopped doing that. Otherwise, this year it is. But till last year, movies were coming in.
That's very good. And what I think is, from this conversation, we now have a basis, because even my own stand has altered slightly, because I wrote that imperialism from below about over 10 years ago or so. So there has been a shift, in theoretical shift in my own perspective, from imperialism to soft power, because now Kano State has also become a soft power itself. Indian House of Fame that have been worked as Indian films that were worked as House of Fame are now being shown in Niger Republic. They are being shown in Cameroon. They are being shown in Chad. But so you have an Indian film start from India, comes to Nigeria, becomes a House of Fame, and then this same House of Fame is now in another country. So this soft circulation has caused a total reconfiguration of imperialism thesis. So I think our proposed book, if it works, actually, if we get the funding of the cult of Khans, and the way in which the Khan club, the Khanish fan clubs, they're working, they're trying to understand what makes all these films really critical. Why India? Why not Pakistani films, for instance?
Yeah.
But like you said, these films were not shown. Were not. Yeah, they are Muslim, but they are not. These Indian films in Kano were not really exported by Indians willingly. They were brought into to Nigeria by Lebanese, and the Lebanese had this lecture. They have the movie theaters, and they want to fill them up with people. So they feel that the best way to do it is to get Indian films, and everybody loved them. So maybe Indian film distributors are not even aware of the popularity of the films here in Kano. But the Lebanese facilitated this popularity.
Yeah. So
and the next thing you know, it has taken off.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, totally. I agree. So there's definitely like it's a germane conversation and very generative that we will find things that we didn't even expect to find, and it kind of totally maps onto my project, which talks about, soft power and how it works in non-Western contexts and what are sort of the global South connections that
yeah.
are important to explore that people don't actually talk about.
Of course, there is one thing that I need you, especially Mrs. Maganti, to clarify, and Dr. Swapnil Rai, because you've already raised it. That is the issue of India or Indian government not having it in mind or having it as part of its foreign policy to export the Indian culture outside. For example, as a diplomatic journalist covering mostly American politics and geopolitics in general. A lot of analysts, especially those who are anti Iran, have been criticizing Iran as a country for exporting its own ideology to other countries, especially in the Middle East and Africa. Americans have been heavily lambasted for exporting its own, well, as some people call it, propaganda and influence to other parts of the world. But then Swapnil Rai said something like the Indian government does not leverage, if I can rephrase the sentence, the power of Bollywood in order to, or in expanding its exporting and extending its own tentacles of soft power into other countries. Mrs. Maganti, it seems you have a totally different view on that. Are you an ambassador of your country's culture?
No, actually,
Because
no.
yeah.
Actually, what Professor Abdullah is saying and what Dr. Swapnil is saying, I just want to, use a viewpoint or not like writing a book of it, but the person who has been here and seeing things around. She mentioned about Turkey. Yes, I've been to Turkey, as a global traveler also. I can say, yes, I saw similarities of liking of Indian movie, Indian culture, and Indians, particularly when you go to Turkey. I've been in Istanbul, and the way they interact and ask questions. The same in Egypt also. At the airport, instead of checking my passport, the person was asking, "Do you know Hema Malini? Are you close to Hema Malini?" Like, that kind of a thing.
Mhm.
So, they are very much into that in
No,
casual
Mrs. Baganti, the
conversations
question
also.
is it because you always dress like an Indian and you have this, you call it bindi or something, you have the sari, is it because of that? Or if you were to dress like a typical American woman, wouldn't it have been like that?
Well, I wouldn't know whether it would be that way. But, since I hold an Indian passport, I'm just talking about, moving around in other countries. I see that there is, like now I feel the world is a global village
Mm,
and everybody is interested in what is happening everywhere.
mm,
Okay. And then for us here, especially about the culture,
mm,
which Professor Abdullah was saying, there are a lot of similarities in Hausa culture as well as in Indian culture.
mm,
The family traditions, the respect, the elders who are regarded as the main people of the house, and then the others following and being together and having family functions together. All this is very similar. So that is why the deep connection with the Hausa culture and Indian culture, and people relate with Indians a lot here because of that. Okay,
okay,
apart from me
yeah.
being in the university,
Mm,
I still see people, outside also are very, they are in awe with the Indian culture. Or, if you wear a sari and go, they are so particular to learn about the combination and what type of a sari it is and where is it
mm,
from and all those kind of details about it. So I
yeah,
still feel, Netflix and Prime and all of them are doing their own part of it. They are bringing a lot of movies here.
mm,
People watch movies according to their tastes, and I think India has large variety of movies that come in. Even the storyline of it,
mm,
some of the storylines are the ones which people do discuss quite often. And sometimes when they don't understand, they come and ask us questions
mm.
like, okay, in this movie this is what has happened, how are we going to relate, like,
Okay,
so they
yeah.
are very curious about it.
Okay, let's now start talking about the issue of soft power. I was earlier on watching one of my favorite, finest journalists, Palki Sharma Upadhyay. She's now working for First Post India. She makes this fantastic analysis about this issue of soft power and Indian soft power. Because, like, in that analysis, she's referring to the India to the India as a country coming of age, trying to be one of like an assertive power global. Let's have a quick listen to what she has to say, and then I ask Dr. Swapnil Rai a question regarding soft power.
India is a vocal champion of the global south. It is calling for United Nations reform, contributing to peacekeeping missions, exporting wheat to the world, providing vaccines and medicines. Today's India is confident about its identity and place in the world. It can draw from its civilizational richness and promote yoga and Ayurveda. It can also flex its military muscle and conduct surgical strikes in Pakistan. And the cherry on the cake, India dominates the originally British sport of cricket. It is central. India is central to the global cricket economy. The Indian board, BCCI, is the richest cricket board in the world by a mile. The net worth of the International Cricket Council, the governing body of cricket, is said to be a little over $2.5 billion.
Okay.
Compare this.
Okay. This is okay. There's a lot to take in here, Dr. Swapnil Rai. How much do you think? Because she also at the end of this clip talks about cricket. And in one of your talks, the book Ada you conducted in the US a couple of months ago, you talked about many of the major or some of the major cricket clubs owned by Shah Rukh Khan. That's fantastic. But then, how much of a factor has Bollywood, and in particular Bollywood stars, been in projecting the Indian soft power globally?
Mhm. Okay. So there's many layers to your question. So let me begin with your last question first. So thinking about Bollywood and cricket, I have written about how Bollywood and cricket both act as these diffuse cultural forms that create soft power for India. I think what Palki Sharma's clip is talking about, how the kind of leadership change in India, the kind of economic rise of India in the recent past has propelled India in certain ways.
And
The fact that a certain kind of projection for, like, for example, thinking about the BRICS Plus and India inviting like Nigeria, other nations to join that is kind of a certain type of geopolitical move, creating a global South alliance, which is all very interesting. So like a primary distinction that I want to make is between like hard power, direct power, and soft power. So all of this kind of vaccine diplomacy and other things also create soft power and goodwill. Since I primarily think about media industries, I will give you my 2 cents of what I have theorized. So I've written an article that talks about Indochina and the popularity of a certain Bollywood star Amir Khan in China, and historically looking at the Indo-China relationship, which has always been one of conflict. However,
yes,
this star emerged as this kind of non-state actor and created goodwill. You see it in, so my analysis, like we collected a lot of comments in different contexts made to the star's films, TV shows, but also post-COVID, and comments made on Weibo and all that to do this analysis. So it's available open access. You can read it. But my point is, as I made earlier,
yeah, may I chip in before you go? And I'm sorry to cut you off. One of the things that you have found out or you have written in that article is that Amir Khan's films such as Dangal have been highly successful in China, and his popularity has helped to ease the tension between India and China during times of conflict. Is that just a theory or a reality? Because we know about the border dispute, we know about the West trying to use India as a counter to China in especially Southeast Asia and in the wider Asian continent.
So I will say soft power is called soft power for a reason, because it's soft, right? So it impacts the people. So if you keep on reading my article, you will realize where I end that article is with during COVID, during the Delta variant, there were so many deaths happening in India, like people were just dropping like flies. And the Chinese Communist Party made a post where and this was on the BBC, I have an image in my article, where they talk about fire in India, which is the funeral pyres, contrasted it to fire in China, which was China sending a rocket into space and there was fire underneath it. And this was in such bad taste. It happened at that time. And there was actually audience backlash on Weibo, the Chinese people saying that it is in bad taste, so much so that they took down that post. And all of it, so there was so much support. And this is how I believe soft power works, is creating goodwill for a nation and the ability for people to understand its values and its people at a deeper level than just kind of state propaganda. And I think that that's the beauty of Bollywood in that way, because they didn't push it. It doesn't come off as propaganda. It's like people take from it what they will. However, the Indian state now and the kind of state and the journalist you were talking about has a certain stake, writes about a certain type of publication, has a certain point of view, right? So I just want to say that her perspective is very much oriented towards the current Indian state and how they want to leverage things. So I'm not saying that now the Indian state will not want to leverage films, because now they are certainly very hyper aware of what kinds of power we have and we want to leverage. But historically, India has never done that. And my whole thesis and thinking about stars in that context is to think about how did all of this happen subtly. So, for example, in the Chinese context, the first movie didn't even reach there by proper export channels. The first Amir Khan movie, that is, it reached through piracy and then it was released.
Okay. Just a second. Are you hopeful that one day Bollywood could serve as a mediator or as an entity that would resolve the long-standing conflict or tension, diplomatic tension between India and China and India and Pakistan especially? Are you that hopeful?
I mean, like I said, this is kind of
it's complicated. I know.
Apples to oranges, because that is not how power works, and it doesn't work in direct correlation. So I'm pretty sure there's enough people in Pakistan that have good feelings about India, right? If you do that kind of research, and it's probably because India and Pakistan are essentially the same people that became two countries. So we have a ton of cultural similarities, but also that these films are still exported, even though they might be officially rejected by the government, saying, oh, we will not show any more Bollywood stuff. It's same for China. But the example that I showed you tells you that how soft power creates affinities. When all other political factors align, soft power kind of aids those processes. It doesn't create new pathways directly, but creates good feelings, right? And those good feelings help. And in moments where audiences have a say, that comes through. So Professor Abdallah, when he maybe talks to these people and collects these comments, their certain feelings about India and Indian stuff might come through in those comments. That doesn't mean that India and Nigeria directly become political allies, or the Nigerian president, that can be used as an anchor. As I told you in my Dangal example, in the face of conflict, it helped the two premier. They couldn't even talk, but Dangal became a way for them to talk. It became a moment for them to break the ice. So Modi talked about Dangal and she talked about Dangal, and they could continue the conversation.
Yeah, definitely, and that's absolutely wonderful. Even though I'm not criticizing you, the Pakistanis would say that there's a lot of anti-Pakistani sentiment in most of the Indian films, and a few of those Indian films like Ekta Tiger and this Salman Khan's film Bajrangi Bhaijaan, that have a little bit shown the good side of Pakistan, have been heavily criticized in India. Professor Abdallah, let me come to you. This issue of okay, let me rephrase the question. a lot of people in Nigeria, as you have already said it, that don't like to copy American culture simply because of the barrier, the religious and cultural barrier, but they can adopt the Indian culture because of the cultural closeness, proximity, and so on and so forth. But one problem is that the way Muslims and Islam are portrayed in American films is quite, not favorable, absolutely. Yeah. But right now, Indian films we have seen a rise of films like Patan, films like Tiger 3, and so and the rest, and so on and so forth, which have been sort of typical depiction of James Bond, this guy, the Mission Impossible guy, Tom Cruise, and so on and so forth. As a film study expert, do you think it's a good thing for the Americans, for the Indians to have been influenced by the American films? I don't know whether
It's not a question of it's not a question of whether it is good or bad. It's a question of global flows.
okay.
The world is no longer a segregated, neatly cut place where things are kept within their location. It has become literally the global village. An old cliche, but true. Global village. You can't continue staying in isolation. And where we used to believe that media imperialism was evil, and now that evil has transformed into another form of, if you like, evil. Let me give you an example with Nollywood. Nollywood is a Nigerian film industry. And at the beginning, it was fantastic within Nigeria. Everybody loved it. But now Nollywood has become a new sort of soft power imperialism to Ghana, to Kenya, to Tanzania, to everywhere. So just as the Indian films were being, adopted in northern Nigeria, now Nollywood films are also being adopted in other African countries. So the picture is not clear cut anymore.
Okay.
And with this merger on Netflix, with American films, Indian films, Hausa films, has created a situation where media scholars such as ourselves have to revisit the whole concept of imperialism, whether it is really, really relevant. And what is even more interesting is the fact that the Indians have started now coming to Nigeria to make films with Nigerians. And Nigerians have started going to India to make films in India with Indians, like Rahama Sadao. She appeared in a film with a long title. I've forgotten his title, but it has chapter 2 at the end of the title. And she appeared there, not as a soft image of a weak woman. No, she acted actually as a gangster's mole. She's the one giving some guys strategies on attacking a particular place, a Muslim place. She said, "Wait until the time for the prayers come. That's when we attack." I mean, I find this very, very interesting. A Muslim woman,
why not
northern
weird?
Nigeria, going to India.
Why not weird?
Well, whether weird, interesting, fantastic, whatever you call it, it's very, very interesting that a Muslim woman goes to an Indian film, appears as a boss, as a gangster's mom, and provide a strategy on attacking the place during Fajr prayers, during the Muslim prayers. And so this will, of course, cast all sorts of doubts about Rahama
and criticism.
engagement. So,
and criticism also.
Yes.
Just like.
But then the Indian lady who has been living in Lagos for years, and they came up with this film, Namaste Wahala. And now they have another TV series called Postcards, in which Rahama Sadao again appears. So the whole concept of media imperialism is being revisited, not by scholars, but by the practitioners themselves. The whole thing is changing. And exactly. The cult of Khan, for instance, deals basically with Indian media products, not Indian culture. Like here in Kano, nobody cares about cricket. I mean, cricket is a big Indian thing, but here nobody cares about it because nobody understands it. I don't think I can even ever understand cricket and baseball and American football. They're just weird. They just don't understand them. And so nobody cares about all that. Well, once in a while, you have people saying they want to eat chicken biryani. But then they discovered that chicken biryani is not really Indian. They also have a similar equivalent called the padika. Mr. Maganti will know the padika. So the food is only there, but we don't have this culture of eating curry or tandoori chicken or anything. So see, that's a limit. We don't have a culture of wearing Indian clothes in public spaces. You can only do that during weddings. So there's a limit. So there's a limit to that soft power again. So the soft power of India, in Kano at least, is only on Indian movies.
Yeah.
The soft power of India does not really translate into Indian collaborative relationship with Nigerian nation.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
don't, because the
Yeah.
Nigerian nation doesn't even know what is happening.
Yeah,
That is exactly my point that I made. Like soft power is soft for a reason, and kind of it's audience centric, and how audience makes sense. So, Professor Abdullah, how say like our next project, we are working on a book on Netflix and how these Netflix localizations are happening. Where we are looking at 3 cases, India, Mexico, and Brazil, and to think about how are those localizations happening and how is that specific to culture, the market, the scale of the market, and a lot of other factors that go into what impacts what kind of products get made. And what Professor Abdullah is talking about is from the audience side of things, like what you choose to take and what you choose to leave is very specific to your culture, right? And what sense you make out of that text, or how you choose to translate, as in the cases that he's been looking at, a particular lyrics, what to drop, like why to make Mahadev into Mahdi, and how you relate to certain things. So I think that there is definitely room for a lot of deeper qualitative work to understand this cultural connection and connection between Global South, because we have a lot of similarities in different ways that may not be one-to-one correlation, but there's other elements, which I'm finding to be true for the Turkish case as well.
Yeah, definitely. Mrs. Maganti, let me ask you this question. You know that most of those young people who are fans of Shah Rukh Khan, Amir Khan, are many in Kano, and there are those who are fans of Ajay Devgan, Akshay Kumar, Sunil Shetty, and others who are not Muslims. So the question is not about Islam or Hinduism. I want you to explain, why do you think these characters, these actors and actresses have this appeal to us, people of northern Nigeria? Because there was a time when one of the fans of Bollywood in Kano, called Usman Solo, said in an interesting thing. He said he's a fan of Akshay Kumar, and his friends are fans of different Bollywood actors and actresses. And he said, we do not love all those guys because of their religiosity, because they are Muslims or otherwise. It's just pure and sheer entertainment. What can you say about this?
Yeah, I think I always, according to what I see among the students here and among the people who are interested in Indian movies, I see them, relating culturally more this thing. And then the story part of it also, which I keep on repeating and saying that, they relate with the story and they always feel those characters are them. And they keep, sometimes like, am I looking like a Shah Rukh Khan? Am I looking like, they try to relate with their own, the little bit of moods as well as mimicry or trying to imitate the voices and all that.
Yeah.
I think Bollywood has made strides here. Whether Professor Abdullah agrees or not, I've seen that it's so deep rooted. Even the ladies who are inside the houses and you go to meet them, they also relate with Indian culture so much, and they have. As I said, most of the fashion and the music and the lifestyle is what they are much interested in. So this is what I have to say.
Yeah, definitely. And this is absolutely very interesting thing to look at. And yeah, of course, I have a lot of
And one of the soft power they are talking about, soft power, regional and community togetherness is also another soft power.
yeah, sure.
And that is one thing which they are also into that.
Yeah.
Probably they look at that security, the respect, as Professor Abdallah said, women are respected and all that. That is what everybody relates to. The security, the dignity, the respect, and all those aspects.
Yeah, sure. Okay, Dr. Swapnil Rai, the last question I want to ask is, for a couple of years we have seen the rise of some incredible Bollywood stars moving from Bollywood, I don't know, to Hollywood, or performing in both Hollywood and Bollywood films. Priyanka Chopra is a typical example. She has appeared in a lot of American movies like Quantico, like Citadel, and the rest. She has married an American, this guy Nick Jonas, and okay, British Nick Jonas. Thank you. I stand to be corrected. Well, Anil Kapoor also appeared in Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation. Yeah, that was produced in 2011, and he appeared yet in another American TV series called 24. As a, I don't know, the question: how do you see this? A development, sort of development, or otherwise?
So my book talks about the structural changes in the industry and how it evolved from. So, like I told you, for the first 100 years of its history, it was not recognized as an official industry. So, the stars and starlet production companies were sort of the key drivers as to how these movies spread globally. So, my book maps a structure in the evolution, talking about these proto networks where family-led film production clusters were prominent. And then when India liberalized in the 90s, these became different kinds of networks where corporations and other things started penetrating Bollywood. It started with television, and eventually in the 2000s, when Bollywood was recognized as an industry, you had Hollywood studios investing in India. You had local Indian companies like Reliance wanting to go global. So you get like an amalgamation. So reason why my book is called Networked Bollywood is because it's looking at this evolution from proto to emergent to an agglomerated network, which is it's a complex array of different kinds of players, industrial players, local and global, that have emerged. And one of the key important players that my book identifies that were central to having stars like Chopra and others go global are these talent agencies, right? So Creative Artists, which is a big Hollywood talent agency, opened up its offices in India. And Priyanka Chopra is who I call the star of Network Bollywood, because what I talk about is when she comes on the scene, there were structures that existed that kind of sustained her move to get a job in the Western market. So, for example, there was a company that run by Anjala Churiya Bhatt, who later on became her manager, that was looking for talent that could cross over. And Chopra, being who she was, like having spent a few years in the US and so on, like she identified her as the star. And so you see her entry to the American market was in stages. She came in, she did a guest campaign, she did a music video, then she did a TV show and moved up like that. So my point to your question is that as Bollywood evolved, now the structure is such that that kind of crossover move is really easy for Indian stars to make, because these talent agencies, there's no more like a one company or one manager does it all type of model, but now it's a wide enough structure and enough global collaborations and local and global companies, corporations working in a way to sustain the agglomerated structure that it's easy for Alia Bhatt or whoever it is, like, or what's his name? Richard Chadda's husband, I always blank on his name, who was in Victoria and Abdul, like him or any other, like you see, like every third Bollywood star, Ishan Khatter, for example, is the recent one who's done a Hollywood role. So point is that now, like, there's talent agencies that also represent them. It's easy for them to make that crossover. To your point about why the big stars like Shah Rukh Khan wouldn't do it, like
Yes.
he was like, if you remember in the 90s, this question came to him early, and he is like, well, would I ever do a James Bond film? Probably not. It's because the men are treated a certain way, like, and so he's like, I would much rather that all the Westerners came and watched a Pathan. That is what Shah Rukh Khan is all about, because he is a big enough brand, a big enough star that he doesn't need that crossover, right?
So Shah Rukh Khan is so arrogant that he cannot.
No, it's not about arrogance. It's about the value of his brand and how he sees it, and the fact that he has that kind of global ambition for an Indian product. But the point is that what I was trying to say is that now the structure exists. There are the companies that can help any Indian star that wants to be in a global role in the Hollywood market make that kind of crossover.
But to make this clear, are the Indians and the Bollywood in general, are they proud of people like Shah Rukh Khan for not moving to Hollywood, for not accepting contracts from Hollywood, and sort of not proud of those like Chopra, like Anil Kapoor, who have taken up Hollywood
That's
contracts?
a very simplistic question. Like we were all talking about, it's about globalization. The world is a global village, right? Because you see, you cannot like isolate all kinds of flows, and that would be like a very narrow nationalistic viewing of what Bollywood is. Like Bollywood is a diffuse cultural form. So even when you talk about a Slumdog Millionaire, you can possibly call it a Bollywood film because, you know, all of the cast is Indian. It was made in India. Like there's Indian producers. So there's so much. In fact, there's a thing going on with the Indian film that won an award, which I thought would be interesting to bring up because of your question. Is like All We Know as Light. I think that's the title. The one that got an award at Cannes Film Festival, and now because it's an all Indian film. It's Payal Kapadia's film, and it was made in India, Indian story, but it was co-produced with the French. Like there's a lot of global money that's gone into it. And now India wants it to be its entry for the Oscar, at least, and France wants it to be its entry for the Oscar. So you see complex all this is. And so it's let's not kind of reduce it to what do the Indians like and value? Well, there's all kinds of media, especially it's gotten also confused, as Professor Abdallah was talking about, more confused with Netflix and others coming into all these markets and producing content. So yeah.
So before
it's like not all we know, all we imagine as light. I'm sorry, I've been saying the wrong title. So I put the thing in the chat. So this is the movie. Like both France and India are considering it to send it as their Oscars entry.
Okay, so I would have to allow you to go. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Swapnil Rai. We are also ending in the next few minutes. I will catch up with you soon. You say very much.
Meet you, Sharda and Professor and Abdullah. Bye.
Bye, Swapnil. Nice meeting you, Doctor.
Oh, okay. I have Professor Abdallah.
Yeah.
What's your major takeaway? What should we take back home from you in the whole of this conversation?
The whole thing we should take back home is about the changing patterns of imperialism and soft power, and how there is now a dynamic relationship between what we consider as media imperialism and the emergence of soft power. And Professor Swapnil has effectively suggested that soft power is audience-centric rather than state-centric. Whereas people here in Kano like Indian film, they watch Indian film, that is because they like it, they prefer it. But they don't like cricket. So cricket is an Indian thing. Liking cricket, because Indians love it, is soft power.
Yeah.
Particularly if the Indians can sell cricket stuff. But the soft power of Indian media products is actually running at a loss to India, ironically enough. Because all these films that we are watching, the Indian films we are watching, are not the revenue from these films don't go back to India because they found their way through grey imports, piracy, illegal downloads, and so on. So yes, Indians might be very happy that their films are liked and loved, people enjoy them, and they even have a cult of Khan and all that. But they don't make any money out of it at all because none of the revenue is taken back to India. Even the Alligator Studios conversion from Telugu, Hindi to Hausa, what they call Hausa India films, the Indians, the producers, don't get anything out of what Buzo Rampillo, that the guy who does the translation, gets. So it's soft power quite okay, but at the same time they are being sabotaged because they don't get anything out of it. So this is the takeaway, that we should need to look at this more. And if Professor Swapnil is interested in this and she can get a grant, she can come to Africa, she can come to Kano here. We can take her through all this cult of Khans and so on.
Yeah.
And then who knows, maybe by 2016, 2017, we might come up with a book that deals with this new reimagining of soft power, reimagining of media imperialism.
Well, Mrs. Maganti?
Yeah, Umar, to be in just actually, a soft power, according to me, is countries sharing their values, their ideals, and, culture across the borders. Okay. So, these kind of things is also soft power, apart from the foreign policies or other things, So I still feel, there is a lot of share of culture, values, and respect, which I feel is still in the soft power, which Professor Abdallah says.
Yeah, sure. Well, of course, we've come so far and we've discussed a lot. Thank you very much. I can't thank you enough for sparing your precious time once again to
Professor,
of course, I really have enjoyed every second of this conversation. And on behalf of everyone that has contributed to the production of the show, Professor Abdallah, Dr. Swapnil Wright, and Mrs. Maganti, thank you hugely for speaking to me. And I'm looking forward to more of such conversations in the future. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you for being on the show.
All right, thank you very much, Maganti. Bye bye.
All
Have
right,
a nice night.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.